but I'm really used to that level of work and dedication that it takes to be able to run essentially a small business this way because of the decade that I spent doing broadcast journalism. And anybody who's, worked in the grind of local cable news, anything like that, knows that, sun up to sundown and even times at night, I mean, the phone's always on, the emails are going out, the texts are going out, you're reaching out to sources, and it never stops. And, just because you have one story that airs, on Monday at 5, well, you need something else to air at 6, and then you need something else to air at 10, and then you need something for the next day. And so it's this constant meat grinder of work, which I think is a lot of reasons why a lot of people have turned away from that as a career, and why I was lucky enough to be able to turn away from it from a career. I'm grateful for the time that I spent doing broadcast news. I think if I wasn't in that position, in that career field, I probably wouldn't be in the position that I am in wrestling right now. So I'm very fortunate to be where I'm at, and being the COO of National Wrestling Alliance. I mean, if that's something, if you would have told 13-year-old Joe Galli, who went over to his friend's house because his mom was willing to get WrestleMania on pay-per-view, and she was also going to cook a mean baked ziti, and you would have told him like, hey, you're going to be an executive of a televised wrestling company when you're in your 30s, I would have said you're nuts. So it's pretty cool. I'm very blessed to be in this. As we record this, it's Thanksgiving, or just the Thanksgiving Eve, and so I'm feeling very thankful to be in the position that I'm in.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all, and this is very cool. And thank you for shedding some light on that. You made an interesting point where you brought up, the similarities and how that almost prepared you for wrestling, because there's definitely entertainment in general, not just professional wrestling. It never stops. There's always news breaking. There's good parts, there's bad parts, but there's always a conversation. There's always people striving for more. So I can definitely see the comparison and how it kind of preps you for that. What made you get into news and everything like that?
I accidentally fell into it. It's really bizarre because, I know so many people that, like, from the time they were a child, they idolized, the anchor at their 5 o'clock, news, or they had family that were into it. So it's been so ingrained in them, where I never really had that. I was going to college at California State University, Northridge, and I was kind of listless there. And I was in a program to get a degree in screenwriting, which would have probably done nothing for me. But that's what I was interested in. I was really into writing. And the film program at Cal State Northridge, at least at the time I was there, and I have to imagine it is still to this day, is very intense. It's a college that's in Los Angeles. It's a stone's throw from Hollywood. So if you're going to have a film program there, it's going to be hardcore. And at the time, I couldn't do that, work full time, and also be in wrestling at the same time. There was just too much in my life going on, and I just couldn't make the classes. And in that same building was the broadcast journalism department, and I decided to switch majors based on the schedule for classes. And so it was just kind of like a convenience factor of like, I can't spend, an extra year going to college because I can't make time to go to these film classes. And so I made that transition. And at the time, I really didn't take it too seriously. I was in this mindset, and I think a lot of people kind of get stuck in, and I think it's a big reason why so many of us, especially in my generation, are in such high student loan debt, where you get indoctrinated that you must have a degree. It doesn't matter what the degree is, just get the degree. And that was kind of drilled into me. And so I was like, I just need to get this. But at the same time, there was a kind of a freeing effect with it, because I knew, I wasn't going to try to get my master's degree. I didn't think I was going to get a job in news. So I was really free to just kind of be creative and kind of ridiculous, to be honest. And so one of the last things you do when you're getting your broadcast journalism bachelor degree is you make a demo reel. And, it's just a series of stand-ups that you would see a reporter do. And for the most part, people try to emulate what they see on TV. So they stand in front of, the Walmart. And it's Black Friday, and, economic forecast says this, that, and the other thing. And then, if you were smart, you would go into Home Depot and get a thing of caution tape and put it between two trees at the park and pretend you're at a crime scene. And it's like, police are still looking for the suspect involved in a double murder here in Balboa Park. And, but mine, because I was also in wrestling at the time, I started mine where I was doing a stand-up in the ring, and I take a Death Valley driver from my trainer at the time, who was Brawlin' Bo Cooper, who I believe is still wrestling in the Simi Valley area if you want to go see him as part of MTW. And so I made this really ridiculous demo reel where I took a slam in the ring and did some other stupid stuff. And there just happened to be a guy who was advising. I'm trying to think of the word now. It is he was trying to help a TV station in Toledo, Ohio, and they were looking for someone who was out of the box. And so they're like, well, my professor at the time was like, hey, I know this guy. You want to send him your demo reel because they're looking for somebody doing wacky shit. And so I sent them everything, and they hired me sight unseen. And I packed up my little Ford Focus and I drove from Los Angeles to Toledo, Ohio to start my career, in broadcast news. And at the time, I thought I was just going to be, wacky morning reporter. Like, hey, it's National Pancake Day. We're at the old pancake house. I want to make a 4-foot wide pancake and see if I can eat it in an hour. Like that kind of stuff. But then quickly, the news director got switched out, and it's like, no, we do news here. So you're going to have to go do news. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll do that now. And so I just kind of fell into it and I started doing it. And it was kind of freeing because I liked this, there's a level of creativity that comes with it, and you're always writing, you're always talking to people, you're always doing kind of cool stuff, granted, there are days when you're doing really horrible things, meaning, you got to cover a child that died or some other thing like that. But then you get to cover, giant acts of nature, big blizzards, hurricanes, forest fires, house fires, big things where your adrenaline's pumping. And as terrible as they are, when you're running out to a mass casualty event, which I've covered way too many mass shootings, but there is sort of an adrenaline rush that comes with that sort of stuff when you're heading to breaking news. And so I kind of got hooked into that. And I actually really did enjoy it. And I found it, really rewarding. It's the whole reason I can call myself an Emmy Award winner, because I won a regional Emmy when I was in Palm Springs covering wildfires there. So it gave me a lot, and it also kind of, helped me be the broadcaster that I am today for the National Wrestling Alliance. And so, Ken, when I have you or other people come up to me and say, hey, I like you as the broadcaster that you are for the NWA, there's no way that I would have grown into that without spending that decade grinding it out in local news.
That's so cool, is how it prepared you for what you kind of wanted to do, but you didn't know you wanted to do. And we'll get into wrestling momentarily, but I'm curious about two things. One is there is a similarity, again, with what you were doing in wrestling, where you were traveling a lot. You were going from territory to different, locations, not just locations on set, but you were working for different companies and different news. So I like that comparison. But another thing is, were you just on location, or were you also like an inset anchor, or was it both?
I would fill in to anchor on occasion. I never saw myself in that position because you have to keep in mind, what you don't see is the egos and everything that comes along with television news. I mean, it's just like any other television. Everybody wants that spot. Everybody wants that main anchor spot. And it can be pretty cutthroat when you've got a lot of journalists out there that are all kind of vying for that spot. And so I just never really saw myself doing that. And then the other part of it is there's, you got to pay your dues, whether it's in news or it's in wrestling or anything in the world. You can be an investment banker. You got to pay your dues. And part of paying your dues to be an anchor on a desk is usually you're going to end up working weekends and doing the weekend news for an extended period of time. It could be a couple of years. It could be a decade. Who knows? And that would have made it impossible for me to also do anything in wrestling, because wrestling is a Saturday, Sunday thing. With the exception of our new live power on a Tuesday night, and what the bigwigs do, Monday Night Raw, Friday Night SmackDown. But if you're working independent wrestling, it's Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday, and that's pretty much it. So if I was also anchoring those days, I wouldn't be able to do it. So I kind of forced myself to be in a position to where I pretty much always worked Monday through Friday, which means I'm not sitting at the anchor desk. So that was a trade I was more than willing to make because, you know, I was having fun doing wrestling. It was my passion. It was, and I found it so much more rewarding to do that. So, you know, I was willing to make that career choice instead of really fighting. Because I'm sure that if, you know, if I would have got the degree and got some job, you know, covering, you know, local news in Harlingen, Texas for a while, and you work your way up, and it's pretty much everyone else's story in local news is, you know, they got a degree and they got a job in some small market somewhere, maybe Santa Barbara, you know, and then you get a job in Sacramento, and then you get a job in San Francisco, you know, and that's just kind of, you work your way up in the market system if you're a good journalist. So that's just one way. That's the traditional path, and I did not take the traditional path, and I'm so glad I didn't. Because I think I'm much happier now doing what I'm doing now, as opposed to being, you know, the main reporter for the Fox affiliate in Orlando, Florida. You know what I mean? So I'm much happier doing this and being able to talk to guys like you, Ken.